Hey there, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying your continued study through the book of Romans. Today, we're going to preview Sunday, the 26th, and our study in the 8th chapter of the book of Romans. And we're doing the second half, where just this past Sunday, Pastor Greg did the first half of it. And just a few things that I want to highlight for you as you study this on your own or with your small group. But starting in verse 18, Paul is circling back around to a topic that he addressed a few other times earlier in the book, specifically in chapter 5, verses 3 through 5, where he talks about this idea of suffering. And it's really interesting because certainly in this last half of this chapter, everybody likes to focus on all the positive stuff, on the love of God and how we are more than conquerors and how we can do all things through Christ. But all of that, as good as that is, all comes within the context of suffering. And Paul addresses in this section this idea that we will have suffering, but any suffering we have in this life does not compare to what is waiting for us on the other end, which is a really good thing, obviously. And so some of the things that we're going to talk about on Sunday is, well, how do we respond to suffering? Do we act in anger, or do we try to avoid it, or are we apathetic about it? Or do we tend to ask questions, or get annoyed, or get aggravated? All my A's in that. There are lots of ways that we can deal with suffering, but the idea is that all those things are meaningless, or at least they carry very little weight in comparison to what God has waiting for us on the other side. And the way that I've been reading about this, and the way that I've been thinking about it, certainly in the context of our own family's life and some of the suffering that we've gone through, one of the things that I've tended to ask is, does God really love me? Why would he let this happen? And I think this is one of the great things when you get through this and you recognize that there's suffering that is going to happen in this world. But in the course of it, we see that God is still for us, and that we do have this hope, and that this hope will bring our future glory. Our adoption will finally be finalized and realized, and that the redemption of our bodies, where we won't be dealing with sin and suffering anymore, is there. But that even in the midst of the suffering, that God still loves us, that we come out ahead in the end, and that there really is a purpose for it. So I do hope you're enjoying this and getting into it, and I would encourage you as you do it to not just take a couple verses out of context, which it's real easy to do because they're really great verses, but take some of those verses and really study them and realize them in the context in which Paul is writing that all of these great blessings and things that we realize that are true are also true in the midst of the difficulty that life brings us. So God bless you.